am HO Talk Show.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles Surratt. Tell a friend, because we are on all the media platforms at I am HO Talk Show, also WVAI 101 Jams. So don't want to miss it, because right about now we are joined by some distinguished and highly esteemed guests, and nothing more important than those who are responsible for the well-being, the education of our children. So we are so delighted to have with us right now from the city of Charlottesville Public Schools, none other than Nicole Richardson, Emily Dooley, and also a lady that needs no introduction, Beth Cheuk. She keeps us informed. And so, ladies, thank y'all for joining us today. Appreciate y'all coming.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, you're here to mainly talk about, but of course, any updates that you all think is prevalent right now as we are in this calendar year and also midway through the school year, 2024-25. Please feel free to share. But in particular, we wanted to start off, with the potential rezoning and redistricting. You all have been doing some great informative work of engaging and informing the community in regards to the changes that's happening within our city landscape, right? And how that could potentially affect the population and the districting of our schools. So for those who just may not be as familiar, let's go ahead and start from the top, right? Sort of the top of your work and how this work sort of came to be.
You want to jump in first?
Oh, yeah, of course. So I can give you like the big picture. So recently, the housing developments that have been beginning to start, I think last fall or begin this fall. So we are going to be impacted with like enrollments at the elementary schools. So we've had central office working groups, staff community working groups, and which led to like 4 draft proposals for the public's feedback to where we are now. We just recently had a community event at Greenstone on 5th Street, which was formerly known as Prospect. I personally was a little disappointed because we didn't have a good turnout like I would have hoped for, but we really need the community feedback on this process.
Gotcha.
Can we get a little bit of, I feel like I want a little more context. Like maybe the public knows I'm getting back into things in Charlottesville. Like, what are you all up to? Like, give us the high level, and then let's delve into some of those, I guess you would say, details.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, a lot of what's driving this is really based on enrollment. And so we've got...
So let me go back. Define this.
So this is our rezoning process that we're engaging in, where we are working to ensure that no one school has too many students in it, and to make sure that all students across the city, regardless of where they live, their background, any sort of demographics, can have access to, all of the resources to which they're entitled.
Awesome.
It's kind of our high level, why we're doing this. And then we've got 2 schools specifically, Summit, formerly known as Clark, and Jackson Via, 2 elementary schools that with the housing developments that Nicole referenced are pretty quickly going to be over capacity. And so from an enrollment perspective, but then also when we start digging into our demographics, they're serving a much higher percentage of low socioeconomic students than the other schools in the division. And so that's what's driving this work and what we need community feedback in as we're starting to look through different options.
So Charles, this is my application. I spent most of my life in human service and education. So like I used to teach school in DC, so school teacher, worked national nonprofits, things of nature. So this is all very interesting to me regarding, demography and shifts in population and community and things like that. Can I ask a question, Charles?
Feel free.
Check. I'm the substitute teacher today.
We joked we're going to get you as a substitute teacher in the schools before we're done here today.
I volunteered a few times since I've been back to the Charlottesville area, and I'm a CHS grad, and I went to Johnson too. So my kids went to Venable. Our kids went to Venable together. So we got deeply rooted. But like, what are there like population shifts in Charlottesville? Are there more people, or are there just shifts in the way people are moving around the city? Are there more people, or the population shifts with regards to neighborhoods are just changing?
So I think we are seeing more development in the city, which is increasing population, specifically in the neighborhoods that are currently zoned to attend Summit Elementary School and Jackson Via.
Got it.
And then similarly, I guess Greenbrier, Burnley Moran are two elementary schools where we are not seeing concentrated growth. And so those schools are being underutilized from a space and enrollment perspective.
Now, I don't want to take for granted that everybody that's listening to us knows the demographics of those neighborhoods, that feed into the respective schools that you mentioned. And let me ask this too: Are either one of you happen to be from Charlottesville?
I'm not originally from Charlottesville.
Okay. I was just curious because I was curious about like just the sort of the history and the background of it, because a lot of times when we have public forums and things like this, whether it's school or otherwise, like there's a level of history that may deter people from participating because they may have felt like that they were sort of bamboozled for a word, So whenever there's new, fresh people, such as yourself that have good intention and you're trying to solve an issue and you want people to come out, sometimes that is a deterrent. So that's why I mentioned that, some folks will see it as sort of redlining. So if people don't know the population changes, then they may see it as, oh, look, it's the rich kids trying to be with the rich kids, trying to push the kids below the poverty line to this school and that school. You know what I mean? So I'm curious, have you been presented with that type of argument, or like has there had to be a counter for that type of thinking?
Personally, I have not been presented with that, but my work with Habitat for Humanity, my time there as a financial empowerment coach is when I really realized the history of Charlottesville and that redlining tape that we don't see, but we feel. And I do see that, Summit will still remain very much a diverse school. And I believe that Venable Trailblazers will also be affected with that one of our options with, getting Rose Hill Drive, mostly that neighborhood, all the way to Venable's Trailblazers, So they're able to walk to school. So I do see the shift on how the communities will feel the change with some of the options that we have.
Thank you.
Don't listen to the substitute teacher. I said Venable, and then you started copy. Do not.
No, my children attended Venable for many years. So this is the first year we're getting used to saying Trailblazers.
Yeah. Okay,
so let's keep it.
Yeah, we all gotta work on it. Yeah. Took a lot of work to get these things done. So Trailblazer, everybody.
Yes.
I want to, ask a question about, some of your process for your engagement, with community, and because it's hard work. Like, I know doing this, I used to have to do it in DC. We had this thing when I was in DC called KLTs, which was called Kid Orientation Training, where you had to go and meet each and every individual child in their home before they came to the school. Imagine that. And we would go out 2 by 2 and teachers, and we would go and engage. And I'm interested in, your process for this. Like, what have you all done to engage with the community, to talk to real people? What has been your structure for some of that? And also, before you answer that question, I want to encourage people to lean in, because if you don't, let your voice be heard, then, things will shift and happen. You want to make sure that you have some input in the decision while this process is happening. So you're out there and you're listening, lean in, go to a meeting, let your voice be heard. But what are some of the strategies, processes to engage that you all have kind of taken on through this?
Sure. And I think, related to some of your earlier questions too, some of the feedback that we are receiving is that there are a lot of parts of our community that feel like we've already made the decision. And so there's been perhaps some resistance to coming to these meetings and participating, because there's a feeling, because of the history of Charlottesville, of decisions being made to people, that there is, not an inclination to, why would I waste my time when the choice has already been made? And I think that's something that Dr. Gurley, the division staff, as well as, the school board members have been trying to convey, and we appreciate you guys providing this forum for us as well. This is an iterative process, and so it is ongoing. We have to put some ideas and these 4 different options that are out there. None of them are going to be the final option, but you got to put something out so that we can get feedback on it as another place to keep making revisions from. But in terms of the community engagement, so Nicole and I both are members of the Superintendent's Advisory Committee for rezoning, which also has representatives from each of the schools. And so the school PTO selected members, as well as there are teacher representation, because we know this is going to impact their work as well. And then as we started going through the process and finding these different options and being able to really see there are specific communities that are going to be directly impacted by these changes, then Ms. Cheuk and her team worked to directly engage with those community members, those parents, those families, to solicit direct feedback. So we've had meetings at Kindlewood, Carlton, Greenstone, as Nicole said. Look to Ms. Cheuk, what am I missing?
I would say we started off the whole thing just by having some entirely open to the public meetings, starting at, I think they were at Summit, at Greenbrier, and Jackson Via. And then we followed up with very specific messages, specifically to the people who lived at high density areas that might see a change. And so for those communities, we literally sent messages saying, hello, Kindlewood families, in options. And I'm making up the options now. I can't remember, but let's say options 1 and 2 would mean that you stay at Summit. Options 3 and 4 would mean that you move to Burnley Moran. We're having a meeting at Kindlewood. Come talk to us, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then at those, making sure we know that there's a significant number of English language learners in those communities. And so we've purposefully brought in translators to those meetings as well to make sure that we are providing information and being able to receive questions and concerns from all members of our community.
Yeah. Hey, can I just say, when Beth said, hello, Seville families, I had a flashback. She sounds just like she sounds on the phone. I was like, yeah, that's good. She's good. I'm sorry, Nicole, you're about to say something.
I used to, back when I did more robocalls, I used to, in my brain, I used to think about it as sending out like a DJ sending out a dedication, like this one goes out to my friends at Burnley Moran or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So my kids, like I said, I always say 2 tours of DC. So. But my kids went to Northern Virginia schools, and my oldest, she ended up graduating from Northern Virginia schools. And so I think Charlottesville is, experiencing some of those. The demography is changing such that, the things that I used to see up there where, you go to the parent, the parent night, and there were multiple languages. So it wasn't just 2. There were multiple. We had in our neighborhood, we had, of course, English, Spanish, but we also had Amharic. We would have Arabic. We would have multiple languages. And also what I would notice is they would have earpieces because there would be a translator at the meeting translating in real time for families and parents. And I think that Charlottesville is going to have to get used to some of this and begin to transition, because that's just the nature of the demographic change. Even when I was at, I'll tell you one last thing, and this is y'all interview. But when I was at City of Promise, a lot of people thought that, it was, kind of a homogenous demography that we were serving. But, we found out very quickly that that we were going to be serving some resettled, a lot of resettled families. And we had to hire a translation service in order to do our work, really well. And a lot of people didn't know that. Oh, they're just over there and you think you have a more homogenous group of people, but it becomes complex and different when you have to do that. You have to make those pivots, those changes. And I think Charlottesville is just there's much to learn from other communities that have already done it. But, we're going to have to make some adjustments with our modality, how we operate and things like that. So, and I say our, because I still feel like this is home for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you bring up too on many levels, because like when you talk about the population changing, and I've already been to a lot of meetings within the city to where those interpretive services have to be there. So I'm curious from the school standpoint, like when it comes to serving the families, like has that already been something that's in deep conversation of how do we make sure that this level of communication is really reaching and understanding for all of our families now?
I'll speak to that one. I think one of the first things we did a year or so ago was we adopted a new tool called Parent Square that, depending on the languages that the family set up in their original form in registering their children, it automatically syncs up and does translation for that particular language. And then when the person writes back, say in Spanish or Swahili or whatever it is, then the teacher, whoever's receiving the message, gets it in English. So that is a real tool that has been useful. And throughout this process, I have been using that tool, Parent Square, just to see, well, it's one thing to send out the messages, but are anybody opening these messages or anybody reading these messages? And so back to those messages I sent out to, let's say, Kendallwood or to the Prospect neighborhood. When I looked at the open rates for those messages, it was like in the 90s. Wow. So I would for sending out, I'm well aware that Beth, Cheuk, am a spammer, and people who send out spam don't usually see open rates in the 90s. So to me, that really indicates that those families are interested in this process. They are engaged in this process. And whether they want to come to a meeting and talk to us about it, at some of those meetings, we've had pretty good attendance. But as Ms. Richardson said, at the last one, we actually did not. So whether they want to come talk to us about it at those times, they're following the issue and informed on the issue. So that makes me happy as a starting point. Now, following up with interpretation and learning from communities like DC, or frankly, even like Harrisonburg. And in Harrisonburg, the predominant language that is spoken by the students' families is not English. I think English speakers are something like maybe 45% of their population. Don't quote me. I mean, that's a guess on my figure because it's been probably a month or so since I looked at it. But when I learned that figure, I thought, oh my gosh, we can learn a lot from the robust structures that Harrisonburg has set up to meet all the different families in their community. Yeah.
Is part of that structure different ways of receiving? So say that there's a low attendance on the meeting. Is there like a follow-up survey that maybe folks can respond to?
One of the ways that Parent Square has in all these messages, we've said, take the survey that is available. The consultant set up a survey for us in Spanish and English because those are the top two languages for us. But we've also just said all along, or send an email in any language to this email address called REZONING at Charlottesville City Schools. And also Parent Square has a whole bunch of different options for parents to send comments on posts or to contact a specific person, like direct messaging. So any of those kind of feedback we've heard, even sometimes at the meeting itself, we have not seen as many people as we've seen in the hallways outside the meeting. So whether people actually come to the meeting or just talk to us in the hallways, all of that, we take notes and we pass all those emails, all those different types of feedback that we've learned. We pass that on to the consultant, and the next step for these committees that have been helping us is to just get some aggregate feedback. And in fact, one of the things I really liked at Jill's board meeting on last Saturday maybe, was that she had kind of a heat map across the city of where had we heard feedback. And it was honestly a pretty good, she was very pleased with the feedback being distributed. But the reason she does that is because as a consultant, when they see places, especially places that may face an impact, where the city or where the community has not heard from those communities, they know they got to go, they got to follow up, they got to find another way of hearing feedback from those communities.
Love it.
Yeah.
Data visualization. We call that. We love that. So I just, don't feel discouraged. I think that I think Beth cleaned it up a bunch, but like people want to receive their information in different ways. And the objective is us to listen, pivot, and shift, and to understand that people want to learn, get their information, or want to have their input given in different ways too. Right. Some people worry kind of who's looking at them, you know what I mean? And they want to be able to give the input, and because a 90-something% open rate is out of this world. Like that's ridiculous. That's really good. And then the last thing I'll say is that one thing I learned doing community-based community engagement, getting stakeholder feedback is also you don't always have to build the team or you don't always have to build the event, right? There are ways that you can partner and join other events that have already what I call manufactured a crowd. Like if you're trying to manufacture a crowd yourself, you know, you may not get the crowd that you want. It may take time to build trust, right? Because trust is that currency. But if you're able to find people who already have a manufactured crowd, they've already established that trust and they're willing to lend that trust to you to share what you're trying to share, that helps. I know it's like unsolicited advice. We didn't ask you for that, but I'm gonna give it anyway.
Thank you.
Because I've been down. I've been, you know, I've been all over the country, and this is part of my application. It's part of the work.
I mean, that's what they're in the business for, to get feedback, right?
Yes, and I think to that end, you know, we've there are some great organizations that have already the trust vested in them in a lot of these communities, and so we have been able to partner them. That there's some groups that are, you know, providing snacks to kids after school, so the parents are there, you know, as an audience. They're soliciting feedback on behalf of those parents and communities, and then bringing them to us. Yeah. And so, as you said, just trying to get feedback however we can.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
I think I just want to make sure that for an audience that you might be reaching today, I want to make sure that people understand that one of the priorities and one of the kind of guiding principles that we have articulated for this rezoning process, first of all, you have to move bodies, right? We can't have Summit and Jackson Via just be completely overpopulated. So some students have to move to a new elementary school, and that happens throughout. There's no plan where that doesn't happen at every single elementary school in the city. But the question that I think the board is pretty interested in hearing from the community is, as we rebalance the bodies around the city, we think it's a pretty good opportunity to also rebalance the demographics around the city.
Okay.
But we are aware that, for instance, one of the options that rebalances the demographics best would move Kindlewood students to Burnley Moran. And that comes at a cost. That feels uncomfortable to the schools and the school board, because that asks, and again, Kindlewood is more diverse than what we might think off the top of our heads, but it still asks people of color to change schools to rebalance this, and a plan that rebalances kind of on the backs of people of color is uncomfortable to us. So these are the kind of issues that even if you don't say I love zone 1 or I love option 1 or I love option 2, I think philosophically we just want to hear some feedback from the community about this idea of rebalancing the demographics of the school. The way Charlottesville is set up, the consultant has said you're never going to get perfectly balanced schools unless the city makes different decisions about where to put in high density housing or whatever it might be. But to the degree possible, is it important to the community for us to rebalance demographically? That's one of the questions we've been asking.
So
that's important.
This is you know, this is where I kind of, you know, my policy hat comes in, because you're talking about how parents interact with school, right? And you're talking about proximity, and for populations that may be on the lower socioeconomic part of the continuum, would it be more difficult or prohibitive for them to be engaged in the way that you would need them to, if depending on the proximity? I don't want to get into your decision making, because you all got some tough decisions to make. And I think people in the community do need to weigh in, but these are the factors. And we've been through this before in Charlottesville about proximity, parent engagement, and where people fit along the socioeconomic continuum, and where research says what research says about it, right? We're looking like aggregate, and also what we know about engagement of parents and their students in outcome, right? and impact and achievement, right? And so these are things these are very tough decisions that I think you all are going to have to think about, and have my thoughts in some respects based on, research. But it's going to be hard either way, because you have to think about the whole, but you also need to think about certain communities that may be more impacted long-term by some of these types of decisions. So I'll just say that.
Right. And I also want to say or shine a light on Greenstone on 5th Street, because during this process, I've learned that half of that community attends Johnson and the other half attends Jackson Via.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that we want to keep in mind, as well as where we keep the community together and we're separating our children, cousins, brothers, sisters along in that line. Yeah. If you're on the line, you may not attend the same school as your neighbor. So we want to also think about that and think about the engagement, and it's all going to come together once everybody puts in their feedback.
Yeah, this is true. I went to Johnson, and so I lived in Fifeville when I went to Johnson. But I went to school with I don't even remember how, but I remember some of the kids went to Jackson Via. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow, y'all live across the street from each other. Weird. Yeah. But, but there are a lot of those kids in that particular community, like Orangedale, Bailey, Prospect Avenue, did go to Johnson. And so I was able to kind of connect with some of those kids also. So it is interesting. I don't know what y'all going to do.
and I am curious too, Emily and Nicole, like what you have been hearing. Right, because I hear us talking about like some of the presumptive things, but I'm sure you've already gotten some pretty significant feedback, right? Like, so what are some things that you are hearing?
Well, you attended the Kindlewood?
Yes.
Okay, because I heard it was a lot of feedback.
Yeah, no, I think we're so this is coinciding with the opening of Charlottesville Middle School, where we are bringing our sixth graders are going to the middle school, and our 5th graders are coming back into our elementary schools. And so that shift of students is another piece that's driving the need for the redistricting, because we're going to have more students in our elementary schools. And so some of the feedback that we've received along the rezoning lines related to this is, don't move my 5th grader back into elementary school to then move them to another school with redistricting. Mm-hmm. So trying to limit the number of transition points that a student is hit with. Mm-hmm. Also concerns about younger siblings and be able to, continue through the elementary years in the same school that their family has attended. And so there have been lots of feedback and questions about phasing. So how can we address those concerns? But we got to get a map first. You figure out what these zones are, and then we can tackle the phasing concerns. So that's one set of feedback that we've received a lot of input on. And then I wish it were clear cut, right? That's the challenge that we're tasked with, is that the feedback is not consistent. There are, a vocal group that is saying, we recognize it's hard, but it's more important that we have, an even distribution of schools, because the resources and the access to the resources are important. So, the teachers, class sizes, reading specialists, math specialists, that is more important than keeping a student in the school that they've attended historically. There's another group, equal number, that is saying the opposite, that, we want to stay where we've been. It's important, to our community that we continue to attend the schools that we've been going to, and to the point that you made about parents and proximity. If I don't have a car and my kid gets sick, I need to be able to walk to the elementary school to get them. The engagement piece, those are really valid and important concerns. And we don't have the answers yet. That's what we, are continuing to work through and weigh through the pros and cons. If it was really obvious, we wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion. It's really tough questions for our community to grapple with.
And another thing that I know is tough for educators, because I know most educators, want to believe that we do it just because we love the kids. We love all children. But if we're completely honest, though, there are times of cultural biases. And I say that meaning that there are some teachers who will take a job at a certain school because of that demographic. So I guess I'm kind of curious, the consideration of that and I kind of feel like that you have alluded to that being the case of when you move a family of color maybe into a school where the majority of staff, majority of the current student population, could be white or other, and the impact that will have, because they may not feel accepted. Folks there may not be used to serving certain demographics, certain populations, it's sort of a hard truth, but it's something that, that has to be recognized,
I will say that I am extremely proud of our community members. I see a lot of people that I attended school with, high school, college, who are stepping up in this community, who have came back home and are applying and are taking substitute positions, are being in our buildings after a hard year we had last year, and stepping up and showing up for our students. So I can say it's obvious that we care, we're coming together, and change is going to come, but we are doing it one step at a time.
Yeah, thank you for that. If it's okay with you all, can we take a quick break and then we'll come right back with the next steps? Unless you want, did you have something on that, Beth? Or you can come back with next steps.
The only thing I will say also is just because I want to finish up the conversation about community feedback. I think one thing that our consultant tells us does not happen everywhere is that the community feedback we've heard most clearly is that people love every single one of our elementary schools. Sometimes I think in some communities there are schools that people don't want to be at. And I think one thing the consultant has said that she's just struck by the fact that at every single one of our elementary schools, people are happy and they don't want to leave.
Awesome. Thank you all. Yeah. So family, we are joined by Emily Dooley, Nicole Richardson, Beth Cheuk of Charlottesville City Schools. And we're just going to come right back to wrap up with them to talk about the next steps so we can know how we can get further engaged and involved in this rezoning process. All right, IMHO Talk Show. Stay tuned. IMHO Talk Show, back like we never left. Sir Charles Surratt, Charlottesville City School guests right about now. It's Emily Dooley, Nicole Richardson, and Beth Cheuk. And and thank you all once again, not just for joining us, but also the great work that you're doing. Because like I said, the biggest heroes in the community aren't the the professional athletes and whatnot. It's the folks that are raising our children, right? And make sure that our children are prepared to be contributing citizens and knowledgeable on all things. So thank you all for the work that you're doing. And so we're here to make sure that folks get engaged and are aware of the reason for the city schools proposed rezoning and what's driving that. So we've been talking about that, population growth and changes. And where it really is a need. So, before we let you all go, just want to make sure that, we talk about the next steps, so folks know that if they have been involved or if they have not been involved, how do they at this point, starting right now, let their voices be heard?
So December and January, we are gathering and reviewing all of the feedback from the community. Early January, we are going to bring back together the community and the advisors and just talk about the different options for recommendation. We're looking like January. We're going to release the recommendation to the public. So hopefully we have some type of finalized document. January 22nd, event for the people to come give public comment. So that is an opportunity for you to come and have your voice heard if you have not had the time or the chance yet. In February, it should be on the next board agenda for discussion. So that's what the timeline is looking like right now. And then a decision should be made around March.
I think through all that, so there's just, ongoing opportunities for the public to continue giving us feedback as we, head to what in mid-January will be the next iteration of the most final draft. But even then, there are still opportunities for the public to give feedback by either going to the charlottesvilleschools.org website and navigating. There's a whole big section of resources on our website to help people gain an understanding of what we've done. A link to the survey to give feedback. You can email rezoning@charlottesvilleschools.org. Pull us aside in the grocery store, wherever we are, we want the feedback. And even once it's presented to the board, there are still opportunities for us to ask for tweaks. I think, what I'm really trying to get at here is that it's iterative. It is not done. We still need to hear from our community members.
Mm-hmm. Yes, nothing is final.
Yeah. And going to the website is the best way to stay informed, or is there like a mailing list one could get the updates from?
We send out a community newsletter once a month called the News and Highlights, and that one has since maybe July or whenever we first started working with these consultants. That one, this rezoning story is featured prominently in that every single month. So for any families who want to receive that, if you're a community member and you just don't get the school newsletter, there is a way, again, on our website for folks to sign up to receive those updates. That's probably the best way. But we've also been reaching out to the news a lot. I think it's been on social media. There's different pockets where you can kind of follow in the way that's most comfortable for you.
Nice. Thank you all. Thank you all for this work. It's much needed work. So, as always, folks, you gotta get involved. Gotta get involved. We can't just sit back and complain. Gotta be involved. Let our voices be heard. So, I think a good way to close, and Beth, I don't know if this
can I say something?
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to thank y'all.
Yeah.
I don't think that people that work in the enterprise of education, sometimes it can be a thankless job and you do a lot of hard work. And sometimes you even have your own families and you got to make sure that you're kind of taking care of that piece and also helping to make sure that people have structure and intentionality in the system. And, people need to be more appreciative. I was always, my kids come home saying something bad about a teacher, I'm going to ask the teacher first, I'm going to be on the teacher side. So I think that we got to support the schools and then, if there is an issue, we lean in, but, you guys are doing a great job and just want to celebrate you all for the hard work that you put in every single day to make sure our kids are learning, that they're safe, and they're moving in the right direction. So just want to say that. I just want to put that out there, Charles.
Indeed.
Well, as a former educator, former classroom teacher, it's real. People have no idea how you got to get up every day and make it happen and provide a high quality experience for children who sometimes have circumstances that are not always great, but you got to be there 100%. My principal used to tell me it's Disney on Ice every day. That's how it is. So we appreciate it.
Well, and I think, Nicole and I get to be at the high level. It's really, your gratitude and thanks go to our teachers, our instructional assistants, custodians, school nutrition, bus drivers. I mean, those are the folks with boots on the grounds that are really doing the work for our students. And there's so much good work. We talked today just about rezoning, but, if you're not impacted by this and rezoning is not your thing, we've got a lot of other great things happening. The opening of Charlottesville Middle School construction is really well underway, celebrating the 50th anniversary of Charlottesville High School this year, which is really exciting. And so, the news so often highlights the negative, but I just want to remind people of just all the amazing things that are happening in our schools. It's really an incredible community.
Oh, let's throw out that CHS now has a mascot.
That's right.
We do. So,
yes.
Yeah. So we are changing all around.
Yeah, I've been seeing the Black Knight at the basketball game.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. And what else we got going on, Beth? If you want to chime in at all, because I know there was some other non-rezoning good news to talk about coming up.
I don't think we can say often enough how exciting it is that the middle school construction is going on schedule, basically on budget, all those things. Usually when you do a big old project like that, you're holding your breath. And definitely there have been some problem solving. I think at the beginning they found a lot of rock. The Bible always makes building on a rock sound like a good thing, but in reality, I think it costs a little extra when you find that much rock. So we appreciate the construction company finding good solutions for us and keeping us on track.
Yeah, yes, indeed. You know, and that actually reminds me, even with the rezoning conversations, have you all gotten to the point yet of needing to talk to the city about, well, hey, some of these schools are going to be busting at the seams. Now we got to add to the budget as well to make this happen. Like, has that started yet?
I think we have a budget meeting coming up
this week.
Actually,
with the city.
yeah.
No, we are
Right
heavily
on
into budget season, but again, a little plug. Any community members that want to speak to the city about continuing to support and fund our schools, we would welcome that.
Yeah, you better have a say about your tax dollars.
That's right.
Yes, indeed. But if that's all, Sarad, you good? You had anything else?
I'm good, y'all. Okay. Yeah, budgets will take us down a whole nother level.
Yeah, we got to have y'all back, after the budget meeting. So Beth, Nicole, Emily, please keep up the good work, and always feel free to tag us online or share with us anything that we can help disseminate to the to the community. I'll be happy to help.
Yep,
thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all having us.
Indeed.